Could it be that the end of times comes down to an overcooked Angus steak? Well, not exactly, but for sure. If 3 cattle, now they're doing 5, of the red variety, more about them later, are slaughtered and burnt completely in Jerusalem, then this marks the first major step towards Jewish orchestrated destruction of Masjid al-Aqsa, Dome of the Rock, and the beginning of a long series of events that will lead to the end of times. See, in the past, the mainstream of Judaism and those Jews in Israel would not pray in Masjid al-Aqsa simply for one reason. They are not pure as a nation. You might have seen a few Jews hold a different opinion from some of the more liberal sect, and they've gone in to pray. But one thing do they all agree on? Well, that's the construction of the third temple. What does that mean? Well, there have been 2 previous temples on that location according to Jews, both of which have been destroyed due to their iniquity. Well, I can't imagine how fast this one will be destroyed. I mean, Israel is home to the largest pedophile population in the world per capita. They have clubs in Tel Aviv that are full nude where women and men engage in mass orgies. They continually break every covenant and promote LGTB more than most countries in the West. Not sure how Yahweh feels about that one. I digress. For them to build a third temple, well, the ground and the foundation needs to be cleared. There's just one slight problem. Well, a major problem actually. The third holiest site in Islam is situated there. It's called Masjid al-Aqsa. The shared site is where Prophet Abraham built a masjid, which is a place of prostration with his son Isaac. Then it was rebuilt by Solomon and then again by Omar, the second caliph of Islam. It has undergone a few renovations since that time over the last 1400 years. However, for the last 75, the apartheid state has been digging under, excavating, and wearing down the foundation of Masjid Aqsa to prepare for the rebuilding of their temple as they see fit. But they cannot just go ahead and do it. There's been something major holding them back, and it goes back to the red cows. Texas Angus, to be exact. But you might ask, why not round out some cattle from the billions of cows around the world and get this show on the road? Well, it isn't that easy. The cow has to fulfill very specific criteria, similar to in the Quran, where the children of Israel were commanded to slaughter a cow, and they kept asking questions to avoid doing the slaughter, such that they narrowed it down to the rarest, most valuable cow that was owned by the entirety of the children of Israel. Like there was nothing more valuable. And then they almost disobeyed God because they were loath to give up the best of what they had. Similar to the story of Cain and Abel, Well, what is it about this cow that made it take decades for them to fulfill the prophecy and promise they so desperately wish to come true? Well, that's because it had to be red, and it had to be a heifer. Completely red, even the hooves. So much that it cannot have more than 2 non-red hairs on the entire body. Yes, they counted all of them. Millions of hairs with a microscope of 5 cows. It has to be of natural birth, has to eat natural food, and it has to be at least 2 years and 1 day old to be eligible for the ceremony. Further, it must also have never been used for any labor or have been impregnated. To let you know how rare and special this is, since the time of Moses, who slaughtered the first red heifer until the destruction of the temple, only 9 red heifers were prepared. This was sufficient to maintain the purity for 2,000 plus years, according to them. What does this have to do with the temple being rebuilt? The red heifer was the main component in the biblically mandated process of ritual purification for impurity that results from being in close contact with dead bodies. Because the elements needed for this ceremony have been lacking since the destruction of the second temple, all Jews today are considered ritually impure, thereby preventing the return of the second temple. The Temple Institute, a very well-funded institution, launched its Red Heifer program about a decade ago, led by Rabbi Azariah Ariel. But even in temple times, an animal that fulfilled the biblical requirements was exceedingly rare. Failing to produce a suitable candidate from its ranchers in Israel, the Temple Institute began investigating alternative sources for a red heifer. Bonei Israel, an organization that connects Christian lovers of Israel to the Holy Land, stepped in to help. Led by Byron Stinson, a native Texan, Bonei Israel understood ranchers. So this Texan, ultra-loving Israel supporter, Christian who doesn't know that the same Israelis who he is helping will one day slaughter him when their Messiah returns, was more than willing to help. Now, what does this have to do with the end times? Okay, so they destroyed the site beloved to 2 billion Muslims, causing a ton of havoc and chaos worldwide. How is this a sign for the final reckoning? Well, according to Jews, once the temple is rebuilt and the Jews are purified this third time, it signals what they have been waiting thousands of years for, the coming of the Mashiach, or the Messiah, as the Christians say. However, it definitely isn't Jesus. Jews loathe Jesus. They hate him so much that in Israeli TV, every year they have comedy skits where they put Yeshu on a cross and mock his crucifixion. Even the Talmud of the Jews says that Jesus is in hell, boiling in semen and excrement, along with his mother Mary. Yes, you Christians for Israel heard that right. Ask your Jewish buddies next time you're rubbing elbows about Jesus. Tell them to shoot it straight, because the truth is all over if you know where to look. So once their Messiah comes, who we know of course will be the Antichrist, this will trigger a whole host of oppression all over the world like never before seen. However, as true believers, we know that the Mahdi and his army will fight against this false Messiah until the real Messiah, Jesus, peace be upon him, returns to kill the fake Jewish Antichrist. Until then, I'm going to enjoy me some nice steak. But I have a message, one final message for Muslims who are concerned, rightfully so, about the destruction of Masjid al-Aqsa. If Masjid al-Aqsa was destroyed tomorrow, I would be less upset than I am about what's happening in Gaza from the death of one person. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and our messenger Muhammad, the final prophet in a long line of prophets, from Adam to Abraham, Jesus, Moses, Noah, Ezekiel, all of them in between, told us that the blood of a believer is more valuable than the most valuable thing on earth, including the Kaaba. If you're a true believer, you should care far less about a material thing breaking down than the blood of a believer being spilled. So our hearts, in fact, should care more about what's happening in Gaza and the blood that will be spilled once they tear down Masjid al-Aqsa, rather than the masjid itself, because these things can be rebuilt, especially once Muslims get their strength back and we take over Israel once and for all. Brothers and sisters, if you like this content, last hope on that like. Make sure you saddle up on that subscribe. And as always, y'all take care now.